In this video, we're going to do a quick overview of Metasploit. So what is Metasploit? Pursuant to their website at Metasploit.com, it is a penetration testing framework. That means it's a set of tools that you can use to do penetration testing. And if you want deeper knowledge, I would definitely check out the documents here at Metasploit.com. So one of the first things we want to know about running Metasploit is how to start it. So within Kali Linux, we can run the terminal, and then we can start it from within the terminal. Depending on what you want to do, you might want to either be a standard user, like the default here is Kali at Kali, or you might want to be a root user, and that would be root at Kali. And if you want to be a standard user, it might be because that you are using certain modules that are expecting standard user environment variables. But many times you might want to be a root user because you might need to be able to do things like access the ports that are below 1024, for instance. So if we want to log in as a root user, we can just do sudo su. And then for this version of Kali Linux, the password is just Kali. In other versions, it might be TOR, but it just depends. For this one, it is Kali. And then once we are in as a root user, I can just start the Metasploit console by typing msf console and hitting enter. And it takes a little while to load in, and it has a pretty ASCII drawing here when it loads in. The key to understanding how to use Metasploit is to understand the terminology. So each of the components that you can run within the Metasploit framework are referred to as modules. And you can see here in the documentation how many modules of different types there are. And it also gives an overview of which modules are responsible for doing which kinds of things. So our modules that are referred to as auxiliary modules are ones that are going to be doing things that are kind of a lot of times exploratory before you do an exploit, like things that scan or for vulnerabilities on a system and things like that. And then you have your exploit modules, and those ones will take advantage of a vulnerability that's discovered, oftentimes with an auxiliary module. And then once you take advantage of whatever the weakness is with an exploit module, a lot of times you will run a payload module which will actually do something to, say, elevate the privileges or create the terminal that you actually need to run further commands. And then you'll end up using, say, like a post module, and the post module will do further exploration or exploitation beyond the initial exploit, if that makes some sense. Furthermore, we have these other modules, the encoder, evasion, and no-op modules. So the encoder modules, a lot of times those are used to get around like antivirus or anti-intrusion systems by encoding your exploit. And you have your evasion modules, and those ones basically try to bypass things like antivirus and anti-intrusion systems altogether. And then our no-op modules, those ones are mainly they don't really do anything. They kind of, maybe you need to do nothing multiple times after you run, like in a sequence of events where you're trying to do something else. For instance, if you're trying to do like a buffer overflow attack where you're trying to get to the right spot in like a stack memory, something like that. So those are the basic overview of the types of modules. And what's cool is you can click on them here on their documentation, and you can further break it down into subtypes and specific modules. And then when you're in the MSF console, you can actually select these specific exploits, configure them. So now let's look at how we can actually use the Metasploit console. So one thing we can do is we can type tips in, and tips gives us a list of all the kind of tooltips that it brings up at the beginning. So some of these are pretty good, like there's the help command to view all available commands, and there's a help command that to learn more about a specific command. So that's what we should start out with perhaps. We can also view modules info using the info command. So let's say I want to see about, let's just see the commands. So there's a lot of different commands. I said help and then it lists all these different types of commands that we have. Module commands, we'll use these a lot when we're selecting a module and learning about our modules. So like we have the info command where we want to see info about what a module does. We have the search command where we want to find a module. The use command where we want to actually select that module so that we can configure it and actually execute it. And then there's a bunch of other types of commands that we have here for the program, like generalized commands like quitting. So let's start with the search. So we know we can type help search to get information about the search command. So I'll type help search. It says we've got supported ways of searching, examples, search, and then you've got like a column and then something that goes in that column. So we've got, for instance, type, and then for a type up here, we've got like the type that we want to use, like the type of module, exploit, auxiliary, encoder, evasion, post, no op. So I could search for a specific type, like so I could say maybe let's search for our auxiliary modules, and we actually want to do that as a type, so we'll do type auxiliary, and then it produced a list of 1,219 different auxiliary modules. And maybe we want to refine the keyword here because maybe we're looking for something specific and there's a lot of different modules here. So maybe let's sort it. Let's see ones that have the keyword for like port. So I type port there, and I have a smaller list of 258 different ones, and some of them are not that specific, like we have export or whatnot. But there's two different ways that we can actually select a module or find information about it. We can either use the number or we can use the name. So maybe we're interested in, let's see, here's a SAP router port scanner. So like 179. I could copy this text if I wanted. And then we'll see like 180 is the list directory. So let me copy this one, and I can do info, and I can do paste that. And that's one way that I can get information about this specific one. Alternatively, I can do like info 179. I think that's the same one. So yep, either way, that's the same one. It gives some basic information about it. This module allows for mapping ACLs and identify open/closed ports accessible on hosts through a SAP router. I don't really know what that is, but tells us information about this specific module. Then if I want, I can actually use that module. Like I can type in use 179, and then it shows here in red bold text the one that's actually used, scanner/SAP/SAP_router_port scanner. Or I could do like, I can change modules. I can do use 180. It remembers that last search that I did, the numbers involved with that. Or I can, of course, you type the whole module name out, and I can do use that way. So I can switch between different modules this way. So maybe first you want to use a auxiliary module, and then later you want to switch to an exploit module. So you use your auxiliary module to find a vulnerability, then you use your exploit module to actually exploit that module, or exploit that vulnerability perhaps. So that's kind of a way to navigate. So now let's take a look at how we can configure and execute a module. So a really good one to illustrate this is the HTTP title module, because it's really simple. So I'm going to find that one first. And it's going to be number 5. So I'm going to do use 5. And now it's selected. And if I type info, I can get the information about this module. Here are the configurable options for it. And we also have a description. It generates a GET request to the provided web servers and returns the server header, HTML title, attribute, and location header if set. So I can also just get these options alone without the additional description by typing options. So there are the configurable options. And note that some are required and some are not. So the only one that I'm missing that's required is the R hosts, which is the target hosts. So I can set that with the set command. So I can do set R hosts, and then I just press a space and then enter in a host. For instance, I can do http www.google.com, and then if I want to execute this module, it's really simple now. I can verify that that's been set by doing options again. You can see that it's now there in R hosts. Now I can type either run or exploit. So if I type run, then it does it. We actually got here 302 moved, so there's nothing any longer at http google.com. We're getting redirected there. So I need to actually change my R hosts. So let me do set R hosts, and then I'll do https://www.google.com. Now, when I try to execute this again, and I could do run again, or I can do exploit. It's exactly the same. Run and exploit do the same thing. Then now here I get Google, now that I'm no longer being redirected, since I'm at the HTTPS site where google.com redirects you to. We can test this with also, say, Metasploit's documentation page, which is https, and it is docs.metasploit.com, docs.metasploit.com. And then if I run this, oops, I forgot to do set. I need to set our hosts to https docs.metasploit.com. And now let me run again. And then here we got this description: home, Metasploit documentation, testing, penetration testing software, pen testing security. So that's just a really quick illustration of how you can actually run these modules. Also, you can exit a module. So of course you can just use another one. So like if I did use 6, I don't even remember what it was. We've selected this CMD Windows HTTP message box. What is that? Let's see. Info. It's fetch and execute a x64 payload from an HTTPS server. Okay. But also I can press back, and then it brings us out of having any payload. So now I'm back at the regular Metasploit console with no payload selected. So from here I can type options still, and here I can configure options for Metasploit itself. So I don't know, maybe I want to have my prompt change. I don't know why, but I could do set prompt, and I could do something like Metasploit instead of MSF6, and then now instead of saying MSF6 on the left hand side, it says Metasploit. Why I don't want to do that, I'm not sure, but it's kind of nifty. So hope this gives you a quick overview.